If you are even remotely left-leaning, you'll often see the focus of criticism be on Republicans and conservative ideology as the root cause of all the problems in America. But what is the ideology behind the people who actually run a lot of the institutions that we all know to hate? Private health insurance, corrupt politicians, corporate lobbyists, Wall Street, big tech. Obviously, there's a lot of Republicans in these industries too, but you can safely assume that liberals in America are just as common, if not the majority ideology, in most of these industries. For every deep South conservative we all know to hate, there's 5 fresh Ivy League liberal graduates going straight to private equity, investment banking, and management consulting. In America, the most promising talent and intelligent people are funneled into elite institutions that prioritize personal gain above all cost. In the Ivy League and these elite schools, they are surrounded by the sons and daughters of the most powerful elites on earth, literal princes and billionaires' children. Shredding morals and selling out for personal gain is the mainstream goal. Any type of obligation to develop society from this privileged position is secondary or non-existent. As a result, you get a small population of non-ideological neoliberal elite who are funneled into the positions of power that matter the most. Their motivation is first and foremost career advancement, salary, and personal gain. These people need to be empathetic and ideological the most as their decisions affect the entire country. But in reality, they are operating from a me first, hopefully you second mindset. Their traits of sociopathy and narcissism are seen as work ethic and grind set. Today, we're going to talk about American neoliberals, their sociopathy, the mental gymnastics they do to rationalize their work, as well as a real-life alternative ideology that shows it doesn't have to be this way. Now let's jump in. Liberals see the same deteriorating conditions in the West as everyone else. Some have responded with outrage, turning to the left in search of revolution. Others have drifted towards right-wing radicalization. But liberals, instead, retreat inward, focusing on themselves. Many focus on their personal lives, insulating themselves from the chaos outside. The unavoidable realities of homelessness, drug addiction, and violence that they inevitably encounter don't drive their ideology. They might see it as a result of personal moral failures, or they might simply pretend it doesn't exist. They'll put their fingers in their ears and hands over their eyes, hoping these uncomfortable truths will just fade away. Then there are those who simply don't care, unable or unwilling to think beyond their own personal bubble. They refuse to confront the glaring poverty around them that they're too comfortable to address. Instead of working towards societal change, they focus on culture wars against Republicans. They indulge in meaningless resistance, like mocking the far right on late-night talk shows or through the latest SNL skits. They want to defeat Republicans on the battlefield of ideas and give an epic speech to show just how wrong they are. To them, the left is just annoying, constantly bringing up issues that don't impact their personal lives, things they'd rather not think about. They won't stop talking about healthcare, ending the ongoing side, free college, canceling student debt, or stopping fossil fuel drilling. While they thrive in their culture war against Republicans, liberals will always prefer working with the right to stop the left. The left is an existential threat to them because it challenges the very status quo they're invested in. You can see it in how liberals panicked and colluded to block Bernie Sanders from being the presidential nominee in both 2016 and 2020. Many liberals would honestly rather have Trump in the White House than Bernie Sanders. The truth is that our education system in America encourages and hand selects this type of ideology, particularly in college and higher education. Now let's look at how America and the education system hand selects and pushes these people to power. Liberals buy into achievement culture heavily. They are likely to be the one to raise their hand to tell the teacher that they forgot to check the homework. The college application process is probably the biggest event of their entire lives apart from presidential election nights. There's a massive part of YouTube dedicated to it. I mean, look at how many videos there are dedicated to the college process. I'm not just talking about those helpful admission tips. Those are harmless. I'm talking about these thinly veiled videos of these kids flexing about their elite colleges they got into. While there is nothing wrong with academic ambition, the unfortunate reality is that in the United States, our best and brightest minds are funneled into neoliberalism as it dominates academia. This ideology, first and foremost, encourages these talented people to work in a self-serving capacity and not prioritize building society from their privileged positions. I guarantee you these kids are being pushed towards and looking for jobs in consulting, banking, and finance first before any type of industry that actually benefits and helps the real world and economy. Now, before you mention that these traits of ambition can be tied to any ideology, anyone who's been through the American school system or has interacted with people who have attended elite institutions will tell you this type of liberal ideology is completely mapped onto the achievement culture in the United States. In America, you can be almost positive your valedictorian or anyone in your school who went to a top school or Ivy League was a bleeding heart liberal. If you're watching this from the United States right now, which I know a majority of my viewers are, I know you can picture this person from the top of your class in your head right now. Now think about their personality and their politics. Once these kids are at these elite colleges, they are funneled through school programs and internships into the top corporations and government roles in the country. The vast majority of the people at these colleges are upper class and likely from coastal cities. There's also a contingent of people who grew up in smaller American cities, somewhere like Omaha, Kansas City, Cincinnati, and who want to distance themselves from or even despise the place that raised them. The second they get to New York or DC, they'll say that they're from that city now, unless, of course, they want to run for office in their hometown. But don't get it twisted, they identify and relate much more with the other liberal elite kids that they met in college than they do with anyone from their hometown. They fight hard and prove that they too can be just as self-serving as any legacy coastal elite admission at Harvard. For all the liberals working in something like medicine or science or relatively unpolitical fields, I really don't care about their ideology. It's whatever. The real psychos are those who grew up in this generation, saw the deep flaws in corporate power and US empire, yet choose to actively participate in expanding both. They fully understand how late-stage capitalism operates. They are aware of the exploitation by megacorporations and the predatory practices of private equity, yet still flock to top roles within these very industries. They know the truth about war crimes, regime changes, the killing of millions of civilians, and the routine breaking of international law by the US government. Still, they eagerly step into leadership positions and purposely uphold the same system. They've seen the societal harm caused by job cuts, slash social services, price gouging, and profit-driven short-term decisions. Despite this, one of the most popular paths out of elite schools is to join a top consulting firm. This is where they get paid to make PowerPoints that help companies do exactly what they know is wrong. They have been nothing but applauded and rewarded by family, society, and media, so they are too blinded to pursue anything but personal advancement and gain. These people can't fake like they don't know how the system works. They damn well know and choose not to let it matter to them. There's another massive trend of YouTubers going to the Harvard campus to sniff the farts of elite students and interview them or do quiz games. Some of them are fun and harmless where they quiz the students on math and stuff. But if you watch any of these interviews where they talk about money, jobs, or politics, it can be very revealing.
What is the bougiest thing you've seen a student do here?
The bougiest thing?
There's some people here that travel a lot, like on private jets, I've heard.
Private jets.
I had a close friend who took his girlfriend to Paris just for spring break.
Wow, W Riz from that guy.
I feel like buy a new car on their computer in class.
Wow. Yeah, that is definitely up there for sure.
I think I know of a few students who have like private jets that they'll fly sometimes like on the weekend.
I mean, people have a lot of bougie clothes.
People wear some stupidly expensive stuff.
Walk around in like straight up Louis, like
People wearing Gucci shoes.
Watch any of these Harvard campus interviews. They are smart kids. They'll correctly point out the flaws in the capitalist system or US government. They are clearly knowledgeable people. Yet in these interviews, the subsequent follow-up to them describing those facts, these kids will mention that they have an internship or job lined up in some awful institution in the same corrupt system.
One of our boys says he's making like 40 grand next summer doing an internship at Amazon, so you can kind of like, if you got the stack resume, you can definitely get a job here.
40 grand at Amazon.
Yeah.
What?
Oh, I definitely heard people making like 40 to 50K doing like consulting during the summers and stuff like that.
There's a lot of people who do like internships while they're in classes and stuff like that, particularly in finance, pretty well paid.
80K hedge fund internship over the summer.
80K over the summer.
I've heard like 100K sometimes.
Wow, oh my gosh. 100 grand, dang, okay.
People think we're worth a lot more than we might be.
They'll be like, oh yeah, our wealth inequality is insane in this country. Then subsequently laugh it off and talk about their internship at Goldman Sachs that summer.
What do you plan on doing with that major?
I mean, to be honest, like high goals, like my mom worked on Wall Street, so I'd like to follow in her footsteps.
Get into a big finance job in Wall Street, that's my biggest goal.
I was wanting to go work on Capitol Hill for a little while, but now I'm starting to like look towards some private equity or finance.
Some private sector stuff, maybe some multilateral.
I'll study molecular biotechnology.
Oh, wow. Dang, that's very, very fancy. Okay.
I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to be doing afterwards. Maybe IB, not really sure, maybe consulting.
Starting consulting, like get an MBA after.
Probably pursuing a PhD maybe, or joining consultant even.
Practicing law presumably, but still figuring it out.
I'd love to go to law school and like work for the EPA as a litigator. Probably law school, hopefully in an academia sort of way as opposed to a sellout way, but we'll see.
Going to a big law firm.
Any specific type of law?
Probably transactional corporate, just like that boy over there.
Planning on concentrating in environmental science and public policy and possibly combining that with econ. I'm probably looking at something lower than most of the kids here. Some people I know are looking at like econ, making a lot of money after school. I'm not necessarily on that route.
I just changed my major to psychology from econ. I want to go into consulting, I think. Econ? I have no idea what the salary.
I'm thinking stats or CS, maybe 100K.
Venture capital, hopefully, finance, consulting, maybe grad school. Then the salary would perhaps be the typical range for someone in finance.
I mean, this is shameless. You can tell that they all know deep down it's terrible too. They didn't even want to talk about it on camera.
I'm going to do econ, 200. We actually just had a little meeting. Probably all go investment banking after this. Okay.
Not good content. I mean, that's not bad. Depends on where you're working.
The interview, of course, is like, oh no, man, that's awesome. That's so dope. The vast majority of students all prioritize these awful industries. Yes, I know there are a lot of people who will say doctor or research, but I'm sorry, that is not the main route that these kids are being pushed to. It's just not. It's this awful fake economy bullshit. This is the sad part too. It's not like they're just making a bag for themselves and it doesn't affect you. This really affects you. The decisions that these people make at Wall Street firms in DC affect millions of people, not just in America, but the entire world. So yes, it does matter what their ideology is. And unfortunately, there's none there. It's just self-serving neoliberalism. Let's say you're one of those elite kids and did everything right, got all the right grades and did the internships. Now you want one of those high-paying jobs. You are terrified that you're no longer going to have grades to reaffirm your self-worth anymore, but you'll get over it. You just graduated from Michigan, Berkeley, Duke, Northwestern, or any Ivy League school. Depending on your geographic location and preference for which type of evil you prefer, you will largely be separated into 3 cities: New York, DC, and San Francisco. If you're in New York, odds are you're working in finance or consulting. Maybe you're at a private equity firm, snapping up single-family homes in bulk to squeeze out first-time buyers. Or perhaps you're at McKinsey, crafting a sleek PowerPoint on how a company can fire half of its workers while tripling CEO bonuses. In San Francisco, you get to work for one of America's great tech giants, making all of our lives better. Maybe you're at Amazon, fine-tuning an algorithm to determine how often warehouse workers can afford to take a bottle break. Or you're at Google, helping the Department of Defense make drone strikes just a little more precise. Or maybe you're taking the entrepreneurial route. Your startup is launching the next shitcoin, NFT, or Web3 vaporware. In DC, you were dazzled by Lockheed Martin and Raytheon's sky-high defense contractor salaries, barely pausing to consider what they actually do. Or maybe you landed a cushy gig lobbying for big pharma or fossil fuel interests. Either way, the check clears. Or maybe you're in a wildcard city, Austin, Nashville, Charlotte, San Diego, doing something. A bank, a corporation, some data farming venture. Whatever it is, it's lucrative, and it sure beats asking too many questions. No matter which city you end up in, the lifestyle looks eerily similar. You'll likely live in a brand new luxury apartment that looks just like every other one. Classy, lifeless, and overpriced. Nearby, you'll find the usual suspects: an Orange Theory, a Kava, and a Sweet Green. You'll probably spend your free time playing pickleball and hopping between breweries. So you've landed that cushy job, but there's that nagging feeling in the back of your head, the quiet discomfort of knowing deep down you're making the world a worse place. So how do you silence it? You engage in a little mental gymnastics. So here's how it usually plays out. You're at a party in New York or DC, which is my hometown, and strike up a conversation with a friend of a friend or someone's boyfriend or girlfriend. Eventually, the inevitable question comes up: so where do you work? They pause, then casually drop something objectively evil, like defense contractor. Yeah, I work for Lockheed, but it's really not that bad because, or yeah, I'm at Raytheon, but I'm not really involved in that department. They awkwardly twist and contort their job into something excusable. Some don't even bother with excuses. Instead, they fully drink the corporate Kool-Aid, convincing themselves that manufacturing weapons to send to bomb tents in the Middle East actually promotes stability and security, or that their work is somehow a benefit to society.
Champions of science,
technology,
and progress.
We are more than 100,000 strong.
Multicultural,
multinational,
and multidimensional.
Serving every domain.
In every part of the world, for everyone. We are Lockheed Martin.
We are Lockheed Martin.
We are Lockheed Martin.
And we ensure those we serve always stay
ahead of ready.
There's a complete disconnect between liberals in positions of power and the real-world consequences of their jobs. In DC, they're more preoccupied with brunch plans and happy hour, while half-heartedly drafting a memo that, if approved, might result in a drone strike on some village thousands of miles away. Step into any coffee shop in these cities and you'll hear some finance bro or tech geek casually bragging to his hinge date about coding AI for weapons, optimizing layoffs, or something equally dystopian. This is where our nation's top young talent is being funneled. The brightest minds are devoured by private equity, consulting, Wall Street, and other parasitic sectors. They're encouraged to be self-serving, chasing personal gain at the expense of any broader societal progress. This is the consequence of our late-stage capitalist society and its warped priorities. Now let's look at the alternative.
Good morning. This has happened suddenly but decisively. The Chinese universities now dominate the world rankings for hard sciences. The Nature Index is a comprehensive ranking of over 18,000 universities and colleges from around the world, and the scores are based on quality research output. These tables are sortable also by scientific discipline. For example, in physics, the United States didn't show up in the top 10 rankings at all. Sichuan University in Chengdu, across all scientific and engineering disciplines, is now ahead of Stanford, MIT, Oxford, and the University of Tokyo. Here are some other takeaways. 8 out of the top 10 research institutions are Chinese. Zhejiang University is in that bunch. Of the top 50 universities, 26 are from China. The United States has 14. Have you ever been to Xiamen? Yeah, me either. But they have a university in Xiamen that's ahead of Cal, Columbia, Cornell, and Chicago. I know about all of those. Half of the top 50 are Chinese. The number of top scientists in China is going up, and in the United States it's going down. 2022 marked the first time that China had passed the United States. And in 2022, Chinese scientists published a third of the most influential research across the world. In the US, 2020 was the peak, and it's been dropping since. Now China has 28% of the world's top scientists, while last year the US had 27%. And we're right to wonder if maybe we could be counting a lot of Chinese scientists here as our own, because they currently work in the US for a US company or a US university, but who are Chinese and who could make this trend worse just by going to the airport. Here's the takeaway for all of it. The global landscape for high-level science has profoundly changed. It's still China and the United States that dominate, but the trends are in opposite directions.
In China, the brightest minds are steered towards science and engineering. They're given all the tools and funding that they need to succeed. Scientists in China are treated like rock stars, they're household names. When a Chinese scientist who's made a major contribution to the field passes away, the entire country mourns. STEM is the most revered field in China, and the number of STEM graduates they produce far surpasses the United States. Top officials in both corporations and government often come from scientific backgrounds, right up to Xi Jinping, who studied chemical engineering. Contrast that with America, where top cabinet positions are filled by former Wall Street and banking executives. Leaders of major companies like DJI, the drone giant, are actually engineers themselves. They're experts in the products they create and funnel heavily into research and development. Contrast that again with America, where finance bros have infiltrated even the most innovative and technical industries. Look at Boeing, for example. A company once run by engineers, now headed by finance-driven executives who've run it into the ground. In China, finance and capital jobs are seen for what they are: temporary, necessary evils that don't contribute much to society. Meanwhile, these roles are the most envied, powerful, and respected in America. China watched as finance and capital grew to wield such power in the US, so they cracked down on exorbitant salaries in these sectors, ensuring they weren't over-incentivized. Ask kids in America what they want to be when they grow up, and they'll say YouTuber, or one of those jobs mentioned in the Harvard interviews by the time they're in high school. Ask kids in China, and they'll still tell you they want to be astronauts or scientists. Capitalism drives our young minds towards self-serving personal enrichment in a hollow economy, or to work at McKinsey or some other soul-sucking firm. Meanwhile, Chinese youth are dreaming of taking humanity to Mars or curing cancer. That pioneering, innovative spirit the US was once known for is being sacrificed at the altar of corrosive, profit-driven motives.
They are some of the brightest minds in science. Wang Zhonglin is a physicist who invented nanogenerators, which help harvest energy from the environment to provide electricity. Engineer Sun Nan found a way to make chip-based devices smaller and cheaper. Then there's biologist Fu Xiangdong, who discovered a treatment that converts mouse brain cells into neurons in a process that could one day help reverse Parkinson's disease in humans. All accomplishments were made while the researchers were working at top American universities, including Georgia Tech and the University of California, San Diego. Now, however, all three are back in China. They're among the growing number of Chinese scientists who have chosen to leave the United States and return home. Many have spent decades building their careers in the US. Some even took up citizenship or gained permanent residency. So, what's driving this exodus?
Yeah, I have no idea as long as I'm making those bands, you know what I'm saying?
Next, Wolf of Wall Street right here.
Dude, Jordan Belfort in the making, bro. Y'all just wait.
What's ironically funny is when people in America who've fallen into this liberal soulless trap have a wake-up call, and then they turn into another huge YouTube trend. It's always someone who worked in one of these lifeless industries, making PowerPoints or fiddling with stocks for $1 million salary, who suddenly had this epiphany, shockingly, that this work isn't fulfilling at all.
I remember when I was on Wall Street on the New York Stock Exchange, I was really excited about it because it was this place where there was tremendous potential for income. And I was around people that were making millions of dollars a year, which is so far beyond anything I could have imagined in my life at that time. I kept hearing this little voice inside, Stephen, that's like, this isn't who you are. This isn't what you're meant to do. This isn't who you're supposed to be. And one day I was crying my eyes out because I felt like such a failure. And I knew that I was so lucky to have that job. And here I was miserable. I wanted to quit so bad, and I just felt trapped.
Ever since I was young, my dad talked to me about three things. The number one thing was getting into Harvard. The number two thing was making lots of money. And the number three thing was investment banking. And that's exactly what I did. I got into Harvard. My junior year, I worked at Blackstone. And theoretically, this should be everything I ever wanted to do, because that's what my parents wished they had, also growing up poor. And I was just like, you know, I actually hate this.
Now let's talk about liberalism in politics. But before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. For this video, it's essential to understand the difference between liberalism and being a leftist or progressive. If you're still confused, check out my previous video after this one where I break it down in detail. Now, let's get back to it. The main issue I want to highlight here is that a tiny minority of morally bankrupt, self-serving individuals control the most important parts of society, with government being perhaps the most crucial. There's no coherent message or ideology that defines liberalism or the Democratic Party in America. What exactly does the Democratic Party stand for? Can you name a single core value they stand by? They don't stand for anything. Leaders like Kamala Harris and Pete Buttigieg don't stand for anything except maintaining the corrupt, broken system. They'll take whatever position helps them get elected, not because they believe in it, but because it serves their career. Both Harris and Buttigieg have supported Medicare for all only to drop it as soon as it became politically inconvenient.
I support Medicare for all.
We will deliver that right with Medicare for all.
And I actually feel very strongly about this, is that we need to have Medicare for all.
They have no principles, no backbone. Their policy platform is built in rooms with political advisors who craft whatever watered-down, popularity-tested nonsense that will please their corporate donors. These people don't actually want change. If they could get away with doing nothing, they'd do it. The ones who rise to the top in the Democratic Party are the ones who can follow orders and toe the line the best. Contrast that with Bernie Sanders or even Republican Senator Lindsey Graham. With them, it's clear they're guided by ideology. They actually believe in what they're saying. Bernie Sanders isn't pushing Medicare for all because he thinks it'll win him votes. He genuinely believes it will help people. That's such a low bar for a politician, yet no liberal can even clear it. Republicans may want what's worst for everyone, but at least they're honest about it, and for better or for worse, they believe in something. If you went to a good school like this and you feel like I'm targeting you, you probably shouldn't. I went to a school like this too. I'm not at all saying that this applies to everyone at these schools. But the people who are doing the things I just mentioned under liberalism, almost all of them went to these elite institutions. That being said, there are also people from these schools who go on to do genuinely great things. I'm obviously critical of liberalism, but this doesn't mean you should go hate on that girl from high school who went on the Eras tour, lives in Brooklyn, and works a basic mundane job while being super liberal. Are they personally annoying? Maybe, but they're just living their own lives like everyone else. The real power holders, the ones with the ability to make the worst decisions for society, are the real problem. Drop a comment below, let me know what you think if you agree or disagree, subscribe to the channel, and check out my last video. Peace.